Welcome, WAM, to our mini presentation, Restoring Organizational Health and Stakeholder Trust, Governance Node Diagnostics in School Districts. We are Ken Smith, John Kurpierz, Wendy Cook, I'm Wendy Cook, and Terry Walker. Next. I'd like to introduce the team because we are pretty diverse in our disciplinary backgrounds, and we wanted to come together because we all had interest in this same research question. So we come from educational leadership and community engagement, strategic management and leadership, accounting, fraud, and government and nonprofit, and public administration and sociology. Next. This is how the presentation is going to unfold. This is our developmental paper. First, we're going to talk about the research problem and the context for developing K-12 diagnostic solutions. We're going to then discuss the theoretical lens, and we're using network theory, stakeholder mapping. And lastly, we're going to talk a little bit about the research design and the current progress on the paper. Over to you, Ken.
Thanks so much, Wendy. So my name is Ken Smith, and I'm the accounting, governmental, nonprofit fraud person. I've been interested in this question of reinventing government when I started my dissertation in the 1990s. And in public administration, it's kind of called new public management, and in education, it's called No Child Left Behind, the same kind of concept. And one of the concerns with this performance-driven or performance-determined management is kind of have this field of dreams idea where if you report it, good results will come. And there's concerns about that, including Campbell's Law, which asserts that if you put too much pressure on hitting a target, it'll lead to fraud and cheating. So I also study fraud. In the early 2010s, I had moved to the Seattle area, and my local school district was putting information out about their local levy. And I had lots of concerns and questions and ended up getting elected to the school board, the 10th largest in the state. School systems have probably a little bit of a surprising lack of management control tools like internal auditing, project management. And so it's a really ripe area for research. When I was at Central Washington University, I met Wendy from the management department, and then also my colleague, Dr. Teresa Walker. She's from the School of Education, and she's going to talk a little bit about the context of school district organization and governance, especially as it relates to parents and constituents navigating opportunities and concerns. Terry.
Thank you, Ken. This image depicts our early on Field of Dreams, where we came together as a community and created a school, and the operation was pretty simple. In fact, as a business owner in education, I had a similar model. That's great, and next slide. But that isn't the reality of our public K-12 system. Our K-12 system is usually very complex, and as this example of a school district org chart would suggest. So that makes communication a little bit more challenging and knowing how to navigate the system. Next. And here's our governance system. We're wondering where the parents are. They aren't showing up on the org chart. They aren't showing up in governance. We know that they elect school board members, but we aren't very good at this point yet in defining how they navigate our system and how they play a role in decision making. Next.
Thanks, Terry. So I was originally trained in management and accounting tools from the business school, and was at a school that did training in an MBA program of business, government, and nonprofit at Willamette, and then was a part of a public administration program at University of Washington. One of the tools that's really interesting in the public administration space is this notion of stakeholder mapping. In the business discipline, we have a really clear idea generally of who our stakeholders are and how we serve them. We have creditors and stockholders, we have customers, and any new issue concern comes to us, we pretty much know how to navigate like 90% of it. We have a mental model or schema on that. It's very different in public policy for nonprofits and governments. Anytime there's a new issue, you don't really know who's involved, their strength, the connection, the power, and the relationships, and how they get their needs, concerns met. And so stakeholder maps is an essential factor in public administration and policy analysis. And so in our prior publications that we've been working on with case studies and other interactions, we've made stakeholder maps a centrality to that. So our first hypothesis, built on our prior research and as we go forward into how COVID impacts school districts and parents, node mapping, the hypothesis that improves the diagnostic capability. And there's lots of research to prove that. That's not a controversial hypothesis. We still want to test it and pull up the evidence, see if we can disconfirm it. Secondly, hypothesis 2, A and B, that these diagnostic tools can allow interventions at less cost because it's a clarifying tool. And then HB, these diagnostic tools, while helpful, doesn't necessarily guarantee an outcome. One of the other things we found was kind of a subset of agents, and John is going to talk briefly about that. John?
Hi. So when we were doing the case study research with this, generally presenting node mapping techniques for individuals, whether they're parents, whether they're school board members, seem to be helpful. It reduces a bunch of fruitless search costs. It reduces the transaction costs in a lot of ways. We'll get to that in a few slides. But there seems to be a subset of people that even if you give them the map, that they see more clearly what they should do, but they don't seem interested in doing it. And this becomes very fascinating because in a way it violates assumptions of rationality. That if you know that you need to talk to the school board to protest the behavior of the superintendent, you would think that you would then talk to the school board if you're unhappy with the superintendent. But we don't see that behavior. And so I'm curious about this being a distinct population in other ways. So this is the open area for research that we're sort of excited about, is there might be traits that are shared amongst people being ineffectual beyond them simply being ineffectual. Next slide, please. So there are two major theoretical streams that this paper uses. There's network analysis and design science. Network analysis is the lens that gives us the ability to meaningfully study the problem because it gives us scale invariance. We can move the unit of analysis between the various levels of granularity, sort of like moving between a magnifying glass, a microscope, or even an electron microscope. We can be fully zoomed out, treating institutions like nodes unto themselves, seeing how, for example, Washington State School Directors Association, aka WASDA, interacts with the Washington State Legislature, what information or resources pass through or fail to pass through those nodes. Then we can zoom in and see how the individual school board can take the guidance materials from WASDA and use that to justify connecting or avoiding connection to a parent group. Then we can zoom in even further and see how that relationship happens at the interpersonal level, how an individual school board member talks to an individual parent, and a distinct unit of information can pass between the two of them. We can even observe whether this unit of information is true or false as a fact, and how it spreads. It's almost like if epidemiology was being done by people doing volunteer contact tracing on Facebook. However, on its own, network analysis is a tool for understanding, but it's just that in some sense. It is information. Where it gets really interesting is that you can share these maps, and the nodes within the maps will change their behaviors based on new awareness of the map. We're going to get into this in the coming slides a bit more, but one of the values of design science is giving us a paradigm of seeing this problem, crafting a possible solution, and deploying that possible solution. Further, as predicted by design science, if network analysis were a useful tool, it would have practitioners using some form of it. And we see that in the form of stakeholder mapping, which you can conceptualize as a cruder version of network analysis. Next slide, please. So, armed with these two theoretical lenses, one for learning and the other for changing, we synthesize them in this situation because learning is changing. Developing a stakeholder map, let alone something more sophisticated like the node network models, and then deploying those for the various nodes to use has several beneficial effects. Broadly speaking, network mapping reduces the cost of information. And Econ 101, reducing the cost of a desired good generally increases consumption of that good. And in democratic systems, the various participants having more information allows them to make more informed choices. That's sort of tautological. This might not be true at the margins, though, and under certain cases, this is why we have research question 3. But for the average community member in a school district, they tend to be so information starved that simply giving them a map with "you are here" on it improves their success at getting what they want. And this has second order effects. Because school boards, they get the same map. They can better see what their constituents want and proactively be providers of it. And then executives in the school districts, like superintendents, see what the constituents want, what the board wants to do, and as a result, they can figure out better ways to perform their duties to satisfy those needs. The benefits of node and network analysis aren't zero sum because it's reducing transaction and coordination costs, and it's making everyone better off. Next slide, please. So we've been conflating stakeholder mapping and network analysis, and I want to pull them apart and compare and contrast a little bit, just briefly, because in many ways they're the same tool. They're both scalpels, let's say. They're good tools for performing delicate surgery, and you want the best scalpel for the job. But one scalpel is more refined than the other. Network analysis is more rigorous and precise. It can use the same data inputs as stakeholder mapping, but it gives much more detailed results. It's a sharper scalpel, basically. But no, I did say best scalpel, not sharpest scalpel. The sharpest scalpels actually use volcanic glass. They've got blade size measured in atoms. They're very finicky, very fragile, very hard to use. A little bit like good network analysis. Sometimes you need a scalpel that's a little less sharp, but you can trust not to crack. So you want a diagnostic tool that a parent can use easily. That's stakeholder mapping. It's a cruder version of network analysis, but runs on the same principles and is easier to teach. Since most of the gains come from all the nodes gaining cheaper information, network saturation is more important than tool sophistication. And we find that sophisticated practitioners have been using stakeholder mapping in other contexts for decades, which suggests we're on the right track by emulating them, as my colleague Terry will talk about now.
Thank you, John. One of the insights from our network analysis is that if we changed our school-centric lens and we shifted to a more family-centered approach in our communication and in the way we structure our network, I think there would be better access and better recognition of our contributors, our families as stakeholders, and our families as decision makers. As this red circle would show, we do have a model for mapping our contributors in networks already. We just aren't using this type of model in K-12 in at least most situations that I'm aware of.
Thanks, Terry. I'm going to jump in with just a quick comment, time check. We have about a minute left, but this is the Wikimedia picture of how Wikipedia and all those things work. And one of the things that's interesting is the tooth boxes on the right and how our citizens, this is that thing that John was talking about, the delicate nature of this is very detailed. You can do a smaller, easier to attend to version. So John, a little bit of time left on slide 11.
Yep. So if network analysis and stakeholder mapping are separated by degrees of sophistication rather than being like fully different tools, this implies that at some level we are teaching network analysis, but that when we teach stakeholder mapping, we're trying to make network analysis for the regular parent. And so this ties into a good chunk of our previous research, where at the micro interpersonal level, teaching activists how to effectively transfer information between individual nodes, not be dragged around by weight. At the meso level, understanding that organizations are often defined by their network structure and what they contact and what they don't. And then at the macro level, sometimes you see this referred to as like the Swiss cheese model in epidemiology if you have enough safeguards, you can prevent failure, but any particular safeguard is going to have some rate of failure. And if you don't take care of those rates of failure, they will compound, they will snowball, and you end up with failing institutions at the large scale.
All right, and then in the last 10 seconds, the work we've done is documented in some other studies. In the current study we found in the COVID, a Blue Lake district in a neighboring state. And then there's lots of opportunities. It's a ripe area, and we would love to collaborate with others. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for WAM for doing this innovative style. And we look forward to meeting with you in the exhibitor booth follow-up. Thank you.